got money, and you know it. Take it out your pocket and blow, baby, show. And I got balls too. So instead of my normal gardening, flower decorating, this week I'm going to introduce some special guests. Marimo Hokkaido. I've been on a journey with this jar of Marimo since last night. First, let me exclaim that this must be the most resilient living being on planet Earth. I visited Hokkaido, Japan at the beginning of my adventure travel career, so these little ones have been with me for at least 8 years, going on a decade. I'm an utter piece of shit in taking care of things, so while I was okay with them for about the first year or two, after that I dramatically fell off. Subsequent to this, someone in my family has informed me that they'd been taking care of them roughly since pre-pandemic, but once the pandemic hit, all shit flew out the window. So I'd argue that these Marimo mossballs have essentially had no proper care for 8+ years. But as I've found out today, they're still alive. So I've been conducting a rescue mission for the last 24 hours, and they're alive. They might even be starting to thrive. The coloring might still show dark brownish, but trust me, up close they actually have hints of green, and that's what healthy Marimo have. So when I opened this putrid bottle last night, it smelled of rotten eggs, but I knew that that could have been from a number of different factors, given that it's essentially been sitting in the same water for years and years. So I followed the internets, and I think the internets have yielded results this time, because I changed the water, then I gave them a light squeeze at first. They still seem to be blackish brown, so I just added new water, salt, and inserted them into the fridge for overnight. This morning I was a little more aggressive because a source described that brown black Marimo might actually still be alive, but just be very, very dirty. I mean, in many ways they reflect me as well. Anyone who has come across me in my travels to 101 UN countries will know that I have what's affectionately called a dirt tan. That's a tan made of dirt. But I was more aggressive this morning, and I actually squeezed and rolled the balls in my hand, and then I noticed something very interesting. After 2 or 3 major squeeze washes like this, the green started showing. So what happened is the balls did multiply from 2 to 4. This one is one of the originals, and then 3 more came on. last night, before this multiplication occurred, I called them Mary and Mo. I'm going to assume Mary is the one who multiplied, so one will be called M, one will be called A, and one will be called Re. Marimo. I've just been in a consistent situation of bathing them the last couple of hours. By bathing, I mean really squeezing, and the green has come back to all of it until I roll them. Sometimes it gets a little darker after that, but I've at least verified that the entire thing inside is green. So I think they're alive, or in fact I know they're alive because green indicates aliveness. Now, to be fair, when I did this whole process, they exhibited none of the danger signs, which would have been sliminess, mushiness, utter blackness, or utter whiteness. So that's my Marimo's balls story. That's why I got my balls back. That's how I got my balls back, and I'm going to dedicate myself to their care from now on. To be fair, they actually require very little care. So yes, I'm a piece of shit for letting them get into this situation, but in any case, it is what it is. Now, I'm trying to figure out which end of the pouch of 100 random world notes we are on. Again, okay, maybe, yes, I've gone this way and that way. To be completely honest, I might have mixed them all up, but that's part of the fun. As mentioned, I usually leverage my travel knowledge to a guessing game, despite the fact that this pouch comes with a legend. I just pull new notes and then guess what they are based on my knowledge. Some are easy. For example, Vietnam is easy because the bill prints the country name in English right on it. Vietnam. Vietnam, and it's dong. Gotcha dong. Yes, also according to the UN, Vietnam does spell the name of the country split up, V-I-E-T space N-A-M. I know random shit like that because to count the number of countries that I've traveled to, I cross-reference with the UN's official list. We have come to one of my favorite countries in Africa, Zambia. Zambia is the first country where I had a chance to trek animals on foot by myself, and the pickings were wild and wonderful, including zebra, giraffe, Zambia is also a home country of the mighty Victoria Falls, shared with Zimbabwe. Some of the world's famous waterfalls are actually dual, triple citizens. Iguazu in South America is resident of Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay. The heat wave here is intense. We've broken records here in British Columbia, and I am sweating up a storm. Maybe I'm in a caring mood after reviving my Marimos. So, health tip of the day, drink up your water, even during regular times, but especially so during a heat wave. We've come across this ex-Soviet bloc man many times, and we're going to come across him again in the next bill. Ex-Soviet bloc is my catch-all for ex-Soviet bloc countries, and now also countries that had Russia print their bills. Mongolia is one of those countries that had Russia print its bills, but Mongolia I can actually identify by name. Other ex-Soviet blocs I just title ex-Soviet bloc. An idea I have for after I've finished this set is to maybe go back and ID bills according to country and do special country in-depths, but that really depends on me and my lazy self. If I feel like following through, I will. Otherwise, Money Mondays will follow my flightful fancy, just like everything else on my YouTube. Weave that man again. He looks European to me, so I could further guess that this country is Eastern Europe, ex-Soviet bloc. Ex-Soviet bloc countries are actually quite wide-ranging. In me mentioning the ex-Soviet bloc so many times, we know actually how much influence the Soviet Union had over the world. It still does. Ooh, oh. Yes, I should also mention I never use the Googles in my guessing because my device is recording. Now, obviously, like most modern smart devices, it could multitask, but again, if I were to do that, then I would just check the legend. And as I've mentioned many times on this Money Monday series, I just like playing a game. This and many other creative activities have kept me productive during the pandemic to the point where I feel like I've achieved what I would have achieved in a normal year, just in different ways. The pandemic year, I've leaned into my creativity a lot more than normal, as evidenced by both this series and What the Fuck Wednesdays, where I've been choreographing my own dances even as an amateur. Ooh. Yeah, I'm sweating balls right now. Here's one of the most populous countries in Africa, and also one of its strongest economies, Nigeria. This actually feels like a polymer note. Of course, the only way I could really tell would be to take my gloves off, which would be a pain, but I think it is a polymer note. Polymer notes have been rare in these sets of currency notes, but that's mostly because polymer notes are a relatively new phenomenon in world currency. That being said, the quality of all of the other paper notes in this set have been mint rare, just like this polymer note, because that's what this set is all about. We've come across this bill before, and maybe even this denomination, from Eritrea, which is a little known country in the Horn of Africa that I passed by on my cruise of the Arabian Peninsula. In this area of the Arabian Peninsula, leading down from the Suez Canal up into United Arab Emirates, they actually have to warn you by law that you're entering into a sketchy area that has been frequented by pirates. I think the pirate situation has calmed down, at least in 2019 when I visited this area of the world. But what's been happening in the pandemic is harder to know, especially in developing countries that have lost what little livelihood they've had. Desperate times cause desperate actions by people. I mean, of course, all populations have what you would call greedy people, but I think in many developing countries, you'd argue that it's more just people trying to survive. Bank Indonesia. this note, despite being in a mint rare condition, looks a little older in design. And indeed, it is a little older, imprinted in 1999. This is a 1992? Okay, sometimes they have multiple dates. We'll go with the earlier one then. Whew. We are back to politically fucked Myanmar. This might seem extremely tribal of me, but countries that I've visited that then descend to chaos in the future have caused some conflicting feelings in me, more so than countries that just have conflict. Maybe it's because I've observed and lived in better days, so I know it's possible. But what can you do? My thanks to Dr. Brett Weinstein for formalizing the patterns that I observed in traveling around the world. He's one of my favorite scientists and an evolutionary biologist who's coming out with a new book. His Fourth Frontier accurately describes what I think I've been observing in the world, and he saved me from having to do graduate or PhD studies. As an example of how much a country can change its style of notes, this is also from Myanmar, but back when it was called Burma. Burma is ex-British Empire. Burma turned Myanmar. And I guess the change in note design denotes the different eras. Although, to be fair, even within the same country name, countries redesign notes all the time, even in times of peace. Speaking of a Russia printed note, this and the next are from Mongolia. I recognize the Mongolian man of obvious special importance. He's been on almost every one of the Mongolian notes we've come across, except for one. Mongolia is a country that I've yet to visit. but it's home to the famous Gobi Desert, where they run a desert marathon. Contrary to what people might think, Mongolia is actually a separate UN country. Yes, geopolitics are complicated. Although I follow the UN's list of sovereign countries in counting countries, I still also believe that some autonomous regions have completely different culture, government, etc., like Hong Kong and Taiwan. Okay. I've mentioned before that this entire set was certified by a professional, so I know they're all real. But part of the reason why some people might think bills from other countries are fake is because they're just absolutely low quality. This bill, despite being mint rare, looks like I printed it off an inkjet printer of very low quality. I mean low quality. I'm sure printers of today actually have better quality than this bill right here. I recall being a student in the 90s and 2000s having a better printer than this. But this is how you know that the country's in a state of disarray. Its currency will show signs of cheapness. In some ways, too, people have claimed that this represents how money from developing countries is actually just monopoly money in appearance and in actuality. Really, since I only have about a minute left, I'm going to leave it on this cheap-ass, fake-ass looking bill. That's why I love these currency sets that have been gifted by a friend. Because someone else gifted them to me, they chose things that are completely different than what I would choose for myself. That's added to the fun and mystery. For example, where would I come across real money that's actually monopoly money in look and actuality? 1 dinar from Iraq.